Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urges the Biden administration not to drag its feet in the delivery of military aid to Israel. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant asserts that Israel has no other choice than fight for its survival. The Israeli military coordinator for government activities in the territories accuses international aid organizations and the UN of failing to keep up in distribution of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Tensions have seemingly risen between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Biden administration over the latter's withholding of munitions.
When Secretary Blinken was recently here in Israel, we had a candid conversation. I said I deeply appreciated the support the U.S. has given Israel from the beginning of the war. But I also said something else. I said it's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies. Secretary Blinken assured me that the administration is working day and night to remove these bottlenecks. I certainly hope that's the case. It should be the case. During World War II, Churchill told the United States, give us the tools, we'll do the job. And I say, give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster.
Netanyahu's remarks were received in Washington with seeming anger, as White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre initially claimed that she does not know what the Israeli premier was talking about. In tandem, during a joint press conference with visiting NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasized firstly that the security relationship between the United States and Israel goes well beyond the Gaza Strip.
First, it's very important to remember that our security relationship with Israel goes well beyond Gaza. Israel is facing a multiplicity of threats and challenges, including in the north from Hezbollah, from Iran, from the Houthis in the Red Sea, from various groups that are aligned against Israel and in many cases beholden to Iran. So the President's been very clear from day one that he will do everything he can to make sure that Israel has what it needs to effectively defend itself against these threats. And a big part of that as well is making sure that in providing that assistance to Israel, it has a strong deterrent, which is the best way to avoid more conflict, to avoid more war, to avoid what we're already seeing in Gaza spreading to other areas, to other fronts. That's been one of our objectives from day one. So we're committed to that.
While voicing the Biden administration's commitment, Secretary Blinken did acknowledge, however, that there was a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs which are currently stalled for review.
We, as you know, are continuing to review one shipment that President Biden has talked about with regard to 2,000-pound bombs because of our concerns about their use in a densely populated area like Rafah. That remains under review, but everything else is moving as it normally would move, and again with the perspective of making sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against this multiplicity of challenges.
Following Blinken's remarks, Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder acknowledged that a shipment of 2,000-pound unguided munitions were under review, while stressing that the United States continues to support Israel in its defense. However, he stopped short from addressing support for offensive weaponry, which is the point that Premier Netanyahu highlighted in his remarks.
We continue to support Israel with security assistance and their ability to defend themselves. As I mentioned, we paused one shipment of 2,000-pound bombs.
You mentioned the shipment of 2,000-pound bombs. Included in that shipment were also an even larger number, I think, of 500-pound bombs. Have the 500-pound bombs in that suspended shipment been released to go to Israel?
Not to my knowledge. It was all part of one shipment that has been suspended, again, pending further discussion.
The main reason for the Biden administration withholding munitions from Israel relates to its efforts to limit the battle from escalating into high intensity. And according to General Ryder, Israel, which is seemingly making progress in Rafah, has been focused on its military objectives, focusing on the eradication of the final operational Hamas brigade, which would end the current stage of the war in Gaza.
What I'm tracking right now in Rafah is we still continue to see Israel along the Philadelphia line. They continue to conduct some limited operations into Rafah to go after Hamas units and leaders. We have not seen a large-scale, you used the word invasion, we've not seen a large-scale ground operation at this point. We're continuing to monitor that. Again, we've been very clear about what our expectations are in terms of safeguarding civilians. I do know that a significant number of civilians have relocated to elsewhere in Gaza. That said, this continues to be a topic of discussion between our leadership and Israeli leaders when it comes to conducting operations both within Rafah but also throughout Gaza.
Meanwhile, in Israel, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant addressed a commemoration ceremony for the fallen of Israel's intelligence community, during the course of which he seized the opportunity to quote a young intelligence officer of the elite Sayeret Matkal who was killed during a defensive operation on October 7th.
אם אנחנו לא נפעל כדי להגשים דברים, אז אף אחד לא יפעל בשבילנו. אם אנחנו לא נפעל ונסמוך על אחרים, המעשים והערכים שלנו לא יצאו אל הפועל. אנחנו צריכים לקחת אחריות ולפעול.
Jerusalem's top defense official went on to address the terrible failure of the IDF and the ISA on October 7th and the crucial need to learn the necessary lessons to ensure that such atrocities as the ones committed by Hamas on October 7th never reoccur. In parallel, Minister Gallant also emphasized the admired capacity of Israel's defense establishment to come to its senses and regain the advantage with operational achievements in Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and the Gaza Strip.
מאז הפעם הקודמת, בה נפגשנו כאן, לפני שנה, השתנו דברים רבים, ובמרכזם המלחמה הכבדה, המתנהלת בדרום, בצפון, ביהודה ובשומרון, בזירות קרובות ובזירות רחוקות. המלחמה הקשה הזו פגשה את כוחות צה"ל, שירות הביטחון הכללי, בהפתעה מוחלטת. גבורתם של האזרחים והלוחמים, בסדיר ובמילואים, היא שבלמה את האויב במחיר כבד ביותר, כמוהו לא ידענו. הכישלון הכואב והפערים הגדולים יחקרו וילמדו, ולקחיהם ישפיעו על עתידנו בארץ הזאת. למרות תנאי הפתיחה הקיצוניים, עמדו לזכותנו הנחישות, ההקרבה האישית והיכולות המערכתיות. הן שיצרו את העוצמה ההתקפית והביאו להישגים מבצעיים כנגד האויב באיראן, בדמשק, בביירות ובעזה.
Before concluding his remarks with a eulogy for the fallen members of Israel's intelligence community, Defense Minister Gallant, who is a son of Holocaust survivors, reiterated the fact that Israel has no choice but to fight for its existence and future generations. Meanwhile, at a time when the Biden administration, alongside European states and other Western actors, are exerting immense international pressure on Israel to double down on the flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, the IDF Coordinator of Government Activities, or COGAT, is pushing back, stressing that while a large amount of aid is crossing into the Palestinian enclave, international aid organizations, including the United Nations, are dragging their feet when it comes to distribution.
Israel has continuously improved our capacity for performing security inspection of humanitarian aid, and there is no obstacle in the way of making its way to where it needs to get to on that front. The challenge remains with distribution. We have the ability, and indeed are, inspecting more humanitarian aid than the UN can distribute. there are two issues, and the main one is that of logistical issues, right? The one of not having sufficient amount of trucks, not having enough truck drivers, not working enough hours a day, not having enough storage. These are all different things that the UN can and should be improving. We've only seen around 25 additional trucks make their way into the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war, and there is a serious need for additional number of trucks, and we have worked together with the UN to increase that. But unfortunately, the UN isn't doing enough right now.
The COGAT spokesman went on to acknowledge that there are challenges in relation to distribution in war zones. Therefore, the IDF is going beyond requirements under international humanitarian law to facilitate additional corridors and implement tactical pauses to assist in facilitating additional aid to the civilian population of the Gaza Strip. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. It is important for us to highlight that TV7 Israel is a 100% donation-based nonprofit ministry with all of our productions available free of charge. Therefore, we deeply appreciate it if you'd consider making a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I'd like to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hessen wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our upcoming TV7 Israel updates. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.